Good morning. Breakfast with the broker every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. or 8:50, one of the two. We have a very special guest, so we really wanted to, we were just too excited. So we had to start a little bit early. And now, by way of Delray Beach, Florida, she's a graduate of Florida State University. She is a Palm Beach County native and a resident of Delray Beach for over 25 years. She won her last election by the citizens' vote without any special interest endorsements. She's a mother, a lover of real estate, and a fighter for the residents of Delray Beach. She is the mayor of Delray Beach, Shelly Petrolia.
Yay! Yay!
Good morning,
I
Mayor.
almost felt like that's how I had to respond to that kind of an intro. Thank you so much, David. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, you are very welcome. Thank you for coming on. It's amazing. Getting in the political environment now is you're either nuts, belong in a nut house, or you really want to fight for these citizens.
You couldn't be more right. And I think my husband kind of goes with the former. He's asking me if I need a shrink and who that should be, because who wants to do this? And it's literally crazy. But, the truth of the matter is this. I have the experience under my belt like no one else up there. And to walk away from this at this point in time, it's just not the right thing to do. I had to get with myself that I could do it for another 3 years. This would be my final time in at the helm. So basically, I decided that, yes, I have 3 years left in me and I'm willing to do it. And I love Delray, and that's really where it's coming from. It's coming from the heart.
Being a Palm Beach County native and being around Delray, it's so important because you've been in Delray for over 25 years, and obviously you're a Palm Beach County native, and the issues in Delray, and you've been on the streets, you've been knocking on doors, you've been talking to the constituents and the residents of Delray Beach, and to really find out the issues. And it's not just the issues about developers or a special interest. It's really about the heart of the city.
It really is. And it's also knowing how special our town is and what people actually see when they're coming into our town, and how do we make sure that we don't lose that. It's the authenticity that this town brings about that people fall in love with. It's why it's easy to sell in Delray Beach. And I remember back about 25, 30 years ago when I first started working with my husband, and we were partners before we became tied up in marriage. It was very difficult to get people to come to Delray Beach to buy because it was a very sleepy town, nothing happening. And boy, I'll tell you what, it changed on a dime. And the next thing you know, we were basically going and blowing. And now keeping a hold of that special, attraction and what it is that really kind of like brings people in is the important part. We don't want to change that.
No, agreed. And, the stigma of Delray Beach, I remember growing up in Boca as a kid, the stigma of Delray Beach was that, it was a crime ridden. It was, not a nice city and all these different things. And obviously, it certainly changed, but I don't know that it changed. I think just the perception of what Delray Beach changed based on downtown Delray and the vibrant small businesses and restaurants that have come in, and it's not from a corporate. When we call it a sleepy town, I think it's it's not the corporate chains just coming in. It's the small business owners getting putting their efforts and their sweat equity and all this in to make really just an amazing city.
It is, and it is that vibe. You come downtown and you feel it. You have this kind of almost left behind setting. You could almost see it on a movie. That where you're rolling into a town where the buildings are closing in on 100 years old, and yet there is just this incredible vibe, this action that's going on at all times. It's pretty cool. It's like nothing else, and it's very interesting to be able to deal with a city that has that kind of an attraction, and also that right now in the middle of this pandemic with so many of our businesses failing, that we have to figure out how do we move forward? What is the recovery going to look like? Are we going to be able to attract the number of businesses that were once, vibrant down there? Because you don't want to become like some of our neighboring towns did, Clematis Street down in Fort Lauderdale, where they just were, bars and restaurants. And then when all of a sudden they weren't that interesting to people, and the bottom fell out, there was nothing to fall back on. Delray Beach has always had a great mix throughout the city, not just in the downtown corridor, but we've got areas where we're doing, business that's more prone to a warehouse district. We have, car dealerships. We've got industry where there's repairs for cars kind of towards the west of our town. So it's a nice balance. So when one part of our market is doing well and the other isn't, we're still seeing, the tax dollars come in and things are being buoyed up. And it's just really it's done a very good job before me. I can't take all the credit, but before me also, to make sure that we've got a great balance to our town, and I strive to keep it that way, because I understand that. I see it, understand it, especially coming from real estate. You have to understand what it is that people are looking for, what it is that attracts people, and then you've got the golden egg. You got to make sure you deliver it to the next person in line.
And the crazy thing is when you look at it, I mean, mayors, political government officials, from all over the country come here to see what Delray Beach has done.
Absolutely. I have to tell you, just this week, the mayor of Jacksonville Beach came down, and I was pulled out. I had so many things going on that morning. I think it was, I want to say it was, what's today, Tuesday? It was,
I think so.
It was yesterday morning, I think, or maybe it was Friday. I can't remember. The days are all bleeding together. But regardless, I had to carve out because, of course, when you are the mayor, you have to be that person that's the front person for any dignitaries that's coming through your town, and make yourself available to, kind of show them a little bit of, Delray Beach. And luckily, she had a tour that the city kind of set up. So I was part of that over at our historic buildings to show her our outdoor display of all of these incredible photos that are hung outside. By the way, anybody who wants to just roll in and go up and look at our city over the last 100 years, you're welcome to do it. It's just an amazing outdoor display. So it's pandemic friendly. But anyway, those are the types of things. She was coming in specifically to see, how is it that Delray Beach has done so well? What are you guys doing? We want to be like you. And that's really amazing. We get that a lot throughout the year.
Yeah, you mentioned Fort Lauderdale as well, and one of the things that Fort Lauderdale is unfortunately been known for recently is their infrastructure.
Yes.
Or lack thereof.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the infrastructure. I know we've talked about it off air, but there's a lot of mistruths that are going on regarding
Yes.
the reclaimed water and a lot of the infrastructure in Delray. Give us a little bit about insight into what actually is happening.
Sure. First of all, I want to make sure everybody understands that the water issues are they're very complicated and complex, but most importantly, that number one, we have our water, our drinking water, tested every single day, and it either meets or exceeds the standards that are required by the state. So that's what's coming out of our plant. So anything to the contrary is not true. As far as infrastructure, that has been one of my biggest, goals, is to get our infrastructure up to snuff. Because one of the things that has happened over the last couple of decades is there wasn't really a plan in bringing it from where it was great and working well, and everybody was happy with it, to what happens after its useful life starts to erode. And that's exactly what happened down in Fort Lauderdale. They weren't watching that, and every single commission was kicking that can further and further down the road until all of a sudden, well, we know what was flowing through the streets. We don't want that to happen. So what we've done is we have cameras that we put down into underneath our structure in our pipe system, because you can't see it and you can't dig it all up, to see where our weaknesses are. So when we're doing the top part of our infrastructure that everybody sees, we're not doing it and then having to dig back down and repair and replace. So we know exactly where we need to replace below the ground before we start doing the upper level. And we're starting kind of in the north, heading south. There's a lot of streets being redone up in the neighborhoods of Lake Ida, Lake Eden, Del Ida, and some of those areas. So now there was some issues with respect to our reclaimed water. There was one incident where there was a cross line that had to do with pipes on someone's personal property that were crossed, not anything that the city did. So when they hooked up the reclaimed water, it went not just into the sprinkler system, but also over to the house. That was capped off immediately. And we had a boil water notice. This was back in 2018 to make sure that if anything happened to flow backwards, it was not going to hurt anybody. And that was the incident that now has been, kind of made into a political attack against me running for re-election. People should also know, and it's not a way to slough off any of the the responsibility, because everything kind of like flows up, and the commission is the top line of the level of command. But understand that commissioners and mayors are part-time employees of the city. We have a hired full-time employee, which is a city manager, that really runs the operations. There's no way that on a part-time basis, the city mayor and commissioners, especially mayors in other like states like New York, they're paid to run the entire city. We are not. We basically are policymakers. So we go in a meeting every week, and we make decisions that affect our way of life, the rules of which we surround ourselves by. But the city manager runs that part of the operation, so has much more knowledge on water safety, water quality, what's happening with our reclaimed water, and that's what we have to fall back on and ask the questions of and find out about if there's an issue. So that's what we do.
And you mentioned the city manager, and obviously, some of these, I guess staff turnover and things of that nature has been talked about and discussed. Yes. Tell us a little bit about what went on, or as much as you can. I understand.
Sure.
And how do you select a city manager, and why have they been turning over?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we don't select them the way that we used to, because obviously that wasn't working very well. So we are talking about how to do it differently. As a matter of fact, last week we had our first conversation amongst the city commission about what are we going to do in the future, because obviously hiring an outside firm to the tune of $50,000 to have them do all the legwork and find the best of the best hasn't really worked out that well for Delray Beach. So what we're going to be doing is an internal selection.
Mayor, I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to cut you off. So, all these reports say, you select the city manager.
Well, we do. The city commission.
No, I meant because, the funny thing is like, everything,
as you personally?
Said, the fist stinks from the head down, right? So they look at the mayor and they say, you know what, you make all these decisions. No one else is a part of these decisions, and it must be you.
I was going to say, and unfortunately, that's how it's done maybe in other cities, like in New York, where their mayor is a strong mayor system. Unfortunately, that's not how it works here. In fact, I can barely say anything to anyone in the city without having at least two other commissioners agree with me. So what we have to do is come to the table on a meeting and say, I would like to see this happen. And I have to have two more people say, yes, I'd like to see it happen too, having the majority of 5 of us. So the mayor is absolutely not in a power position at all. We are a weak mayor system. That's what it's called, because of the fact that I don't have any control over the population, the majority of the population of my commission. But the city manager situation is definitely moving forward, and we're going to be doing it from an internal standpoint. I think that we'll get a better feel ourselves if we go ahead and do it. Even though we're part-timers, I think that we have a better understanding of what we're looking for. So that's how we're going to be moving down that path. With respect to all of the other employees that have either retired or been furloughed, or I don't think we had many furloughs, but anyway, or been asked to leave, asked to resign, or have been fired. That is not a city commission or city mayor's position. We would be admonished to even have a say in any of that. I don't even know most of the time that somebody's left in the city, with the exception of 3 individuals. That's the city manager, city attorney, and the internal auditor. Those are the three members of the staff that the city commission oversees. Everybody else is below the city manager, and we don't even know. I'm often finding out somebody that I liked, or oh my gosh, I can't believe she's gone. I find that out on social media half the time. I feel so embarrassed because it's like, you're the mayor, you should know that. But we're not necessarily even given that information because it's not part of our duties and responsibilities. So it's unfortunate that we're not always getting that information. Just like we didn't get a lot of the information that came through about the water. We only get what the city manager sends us because that city manager is running this city, the operations part of the city. So we rely on those city managers to keep us up to snuff, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate because it makes us look stupid, to our constituency because they don't understand how this whole that phone, as you told me, on do not disturb. I'm still getting disturbed. I don't
Oh,
understand
sorry.
that.
It must be on your favorites. Someone must
I
be.
don't know. This is well beyond my ability.
Well, listen, so when you look at it, you have, in these unprecedented times, right?
Yes.
We have a pandemic going on.
Yes.
We have, restaurants and hospitality and travel businesses being really, really hurt now, and many other businesses and small
Yeah.
businesses have been being hurt. You know, is this a time to have someone come in with a learning curve? Because how long does it really take to understand the city? I mean, you could drive the streets of the city and understand the city, but you're not going to understand the intricacies of that city and
Yeah.
the way that the mayorship works in the town of Delray Beach. It's going to be very, very difficult for, and hopefully people understand from the city of Delray, those residents that are going out to vote on March 9th, you're voting for experience versus, learning curve. You're
That's
voting
correct.
for negative versus positive. And I'm not saying anything because I've never met your opponent. But I do know you, and I do know that you have the best interest of the city residents of Delray Beach. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about, how long did it really take to understand the intricacies? And you're probably still learning.
Absolutely. It is a learning curve, especially when you're talking about a pandemic coming through and nobody had a kind of like a cheat sheet or a pamphlet on how do we handle a pandemic in the
Where's the cliff
country, not
notes?
just globally. So no, it is a learning curve continually. But, the interesting thing is you say something that is so important. And it's one of the main reasons, why I felt the real need to have to run again. There was really nobody on my commission that had served time that was ready for this position. Had there been someone on this commission that I felt like, hey, this is, you're ready for this, I might have said, okay, 8 years is enough for me. But the problem is that basically we don't have that. Now I've got somebody that's running against me that's never even served a day on the commission. It took me 5 years to make a decision that I was ready to run for mayor, because you are put in that very front, a position, and you must, jump in front of things and work with the city manager on a one-on-one basis. Not that I'm making any directives, but just, having this constant back and forth, understanding what the city is looking for in order to be able to help that city manager make good decisions based in, on feedback. So it is very nerve-wracking for me to think that we may have somebody who's not even taken any time to have experienced what is going on, how to get things done, and really the procedures with respect to, how things work in government, and just throw them in that very front position. I've never heard of that before. Most people have experience at least on one of the major boards, and I'm talking about like planning and zoning, or SPRAB board, in order to really kind of understand even how things go through the process of becoming approved. So you don't have that with this. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the board of directors at the Florida Association of
mhm.
Realtors as well as the National Association of Realtors. And I could tell you that they would never allow
Yeah.
someone to be a chair of those
Yeah.
committees without actually serving on that committee for at least 1 year, probably
Absolutely.
two,
Absolutely.
probably multiple years. So when you're talking about the chair of, basically the city, that's a pretty long stretch. And, I think, listen, when you raise money and you get, PAC funds and you go through all these different special interest groups and such,
Yeah.
it all looks great and, sending out postcards and direct mails and whatnot. But, I like your approach because you're actually knocking on doors,
I am.
and you're saying hello and listening to the residents.
Absolutely.
And actually, I have a resident here. She's my director of marketing, Alyssa Harris, and she has a question.
Hi. Oh, I can't hear her.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Oh, it's very dark also.
Oh.
But I was saying how I seen one of the viewers say that the arts district in Delray is awesome. And I read somewhere that you're an ally of the arts. So what did you do to contribute to that and make it so great?
Well, let me just say this. The arts warehouse, the arts warehouse, okay, or the arts garage was never going to be. They were actually, when I first came in, going to sell that to a law firm for like a call center, if you can imagine. And I pushed so hard to make sure that that was actually going to go into some sort of a meeting place for the people because of the location of it. We didn't want to have almost a half block of our city just dark at night where nobody would then want to walk down into the Pineapple Grove area or the areas that basically are the arts, our arts district. So we pushed super hard. And I know that there was a lot of people that were upset because, again, when you have a company that's trying to get something on the low end and make it theirs, it wasn't a good thing. So that's what I did initially to make sure that we had that arts garage for performances. And of course, I've supported our Old School Square and arts district. Our arts district, and I continue to do that because it's so important and vital to what is making our town just a place that everybody wants to be. It's amazing to have these great places to be able for people to go and listen to music or watch a show or a play. It's really, it just adds a great dynamic to our town, and you don't have to jump in a car and go find a great place to eat afterwards. You just walk a few steps and you're at one of the best restaurants in town. I mean, we have so many of those too. So it's just, like I said, a happening town and amazing.
Definitely. And then my last question was, I read that you were the second woman in Delray Beach's history to be elected mayor. Congratulations on
Thank you.
That.
Yes.
So how did that win feel, and how does it feel to be that woman that young girls are looking up to and realizing that they can also be in politics and just being that figure? So how does that feel?
Well, I'm watching it on a national level too. I mean, hello, it's like the glass ceiling. Hello. Yes, no. And I'm telling you, I had the fight of my life to try to do that. But what I did is every single day I got up and I kept that in mind. I said, I have to do it for everybody else because this doesn't make sense to me. It's wrong that it's so difficult to run with as much experience as I had against somebody who had very little and have to fight so hard. But you know what? That's what we're doing. We're cutting that path so that it's going to be easier for the next woman or a person, a minority, to be able to come through, and it won't be as difficult because it's different. It doesn't look like what Delray's look like. So a lot of people are afraid of it. And I mean, I think it's a fear that's like so deep seated, they don't even know why they don't want to go in that direction. Exactly. So by having more of, persons of color, women getting into these positions. And by the way, I think we're great leaders, women as a whole. But anyway, to get into these positions, I think it really is carving out that path for the future generations to make it easier for women to get into these positions.
Absolutely.
And but I'll tell you, it was a great victory, and probably something like I'd never felt before, because you realize that you did it. And I remember there was something that I remember always making sure that I did, because I knew that my two oldest sons, were graduating from high school, and one of them was over at Atlantic High. And because I was a commissioner in Delray Beach at the time, I always got to be on the stage while they were doing their big ceremonies and got to shake hands of all the graduates coming through. Well, to be up on stage when your own son is coming across, if that isn't a motivator, there's never one. So I remember laying in bed thinking, oh, I don't want to get up and go knock on doors. This is 2075 anyway. But that was my motivator. It just sparked me. I just would jump. I said, well, if you want to be up there on that stage when he comes across, you better get out of bed. I was like, yep, that's it. I'm out the door. I'm knocking on doors. And I do it even now, even though I don't have that, because it's the right thing to do. And it also puts me in touch with people who are telling me what it is that's concerning them. This is the opportunity right in front of them to have their mayor and say, hey, this is what I'm concerned about, or here's what you're doing a great job. And that's what I'm hearing, which is great. It's a great motivator. Thanks for the question.
Well, of course. Well, again, congratulations. And I look
Thank
forward
you.
to seeing what you do for the city of Delray Beach. So.
Absolutely. I appreciate
Nice
it.
meeting you, of course.
I'm back.
All right.
So thank you very much, Alyssa. Those are great questions, and a lot of people look at yourself as obviously you're a leader, but you're also a role model, and I think it's amazing for young women, to really look up to you and be able to ask you some questions. So that was great. So I always end the conversation with two questions.
All right.
And I don't know if you watch streaming, Netflix, Hulu, those kind of things, but we'll go with it. What was your favorite all-time series that you've watched, and what are you currently watching? And if not, you don't watch, then you can go with a book.
Oh my gosh. I am currently reading, oh my gosh, The Nickel Boys, I believe it is. And that's a really interesting story about I want to say like a youth a place where kids who got in trouble younger, and this is back in, I think, the 50s and the 60s, were sent. So I don't, I guess you would call it like a
detention center.
Reform kind of place, detention place. So it's very, very interesting, and it's actually based on truth. So that's what I'm reading, because I'm telling you, I don't have time for TV. I roll in and I roll up my sleeves, get dinner ready, and I'm like out. It's usually a couple of calls, and then I'm just like lights out, and the day starts again. When you say series, I have to tell you, one of the most outrageous, I've never ever seen anything like it, train wreck that I could not turn my head away from, and I think a lot of people found this right at the beginning of the pandemic, was that Tiger King thing. Oh my gosh. I couldn't not watch it. It was like you said, you're just watching something and you're thinking, this is actually happening. And I have to tell you, the reason that it is so resonating with me is because in politics and in government, it's kind of the same thing. You're kind of like looking around and going, is anybody else seeing this? Does anybody else know what's going on here? I mean, it's just insane. It's sometimes just beyond funny. I feel like I need to write a book about it, because it's crazy. But it reminded me a lot of, wow, so there are, pockets where really crazy stuff happens. So Anyway, I think that was probably, I would say, the most, a memory that I can't erase, and just unbelievable, but it's kind of somewhat, real. I don't know.
So I'll give you one last question, just because I want to hear from you. What are your top priorities, when you hopefully when you win.
Yes.
For those City of Delray Beach residents that are thinking about it and tuning in, I implore you to do your research.
Yeah.
Don't listen to biased articles and agenda made articles, but listen to what the candidates are saying and decide for yourself who's best for the city. Because I know, I could talk to you all along, but two things I want to, because I really want to get this story out. Tell us about docs,
Yes.
and then also tell us about your two priorities, and then I'll let you go. I know you're busy.
Okay, sounds good. So, okay, Docs. Docs is, just an incredible, place where everybody knows it, and it's currently under pressure of losing it. And what is happening in our historic districts is they're being slowly carved away. The owner now of Docs owns the two parcels to the west of it, which is a parking lot and Dunkin' Donuts, and they're basically saying we're going to put up a building over here on these two parcels. And if you don't allow us to include Docs in part of that, then we're going to tear Docs down. It's really a horrible kind of situation that we're up against. But one of the things that happens is when you say, okay, we'll rezone those two other parcels for you, that means that the highest and the most intense builds are allowed now on that parcel, which provides no buffer to a Docs. So do we fall for that, or do we just say no? And I say no, and here's the reason why. To tear down Docs, they have to go through an entire process through our historic board and even coming to the city to allow them to tear it down. We can be tough in not allowing that to happen, but to give away those parcels and make them more intense, I think it's just encouraging more of that to happen in our historic district. And I'm just not going to stand by and say, that these historic districts were designated for future commissioners to tear down. I say they were. Okay, so that's Docs.
Sorry, Shelly.
And it's still happening. Oh, am I gone?
Sorry, I tried to help you.
Am I gone?
Yeah, you're gone for now.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, just if you can hear my voice, the two things that I think
Yes,
that we're
we can hear you.
most important for us is to look at our water and get a new water treatment plant moving forward, because we're in the old technology. We don't have the newer stuff going on. That's one of the biggest things that I'd like to see that I'm going to be working towards. And also, water is a second issue, rising tides. Something that has been near and dear to my heart since I was on this commission. I started getting very involved in understanding what's going on in our intercoastal and the rising tides. And we need to start moving our city forward in securing our borders in the sense of seawalls and pump stations and ways of being able to deal with the water in these low-lying areas. So those are very, very big topics. You have to have a lot of understanding. I've got 8 years under my belt under one, and certainly I'm going to be able to push hard onto the other. So those are the two biggest things that I'd like to see my administration going forward, focusing on and moving the needle to getting those handled.
Well, I look forward to your celebration and your win on March 9th. And for those City of Delray Beach residents, hopefully this sheds some light on what the mayor is doing for the City of Delray. So thank you so much,
guys.
Mayor.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you. And I'm sorry about my, unfortunately, I did put it on, do not disturb, but something's messing me up. People are messing me
one
up.
more setting I should have used, but anyway, I very much appreciate you coming on, and thank you very much.
It was
and
my pleasure.
Broker every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Thanks so much. Have a great week.